What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the After 29 podcast. This is episode 11, Us Two. I'm Vincent Dunstan, a.k.a. Minister V, ready to get this conversation going.
Mazio Boone up in the building.
It's your boy Malcolm Davis, man of steel.
Clayton Foster, big shoulder brother in the building.
All right, guys, let's go in prayer. Eternal God, our Father, we come to you again, Lord, just to say thank you for all that you're doing for us, Lord, all that you've done and all that you will do. Lord, we thank you for just allowing us to have this platform, Lord. Just a platform that we have to just talk about the things that are most pressing to us, Lord, and that are most important to us, Lord. So Lord, we just thank you for this opportunity. We thank you for our friendship, this brotherhood, and just this podcast, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, guys, Us Two. For anybody that's kind of confused about the title of this episode, the Us Two came from or was inspired by the ladies' Me Too movement. And let me explain that just a little bit before we get into this. So we know that there is a movement where women are coming forward and talking about their experiences dealing with rape and abuse and different things like that. But one aspect that gets overlooked a lot, and it is kind of uncomfortable to talk about, especially as men, because it's not something you hear about all the time. But one of those things that we know is that it does happen. And as much as we don't want to talk about it, and as much as we don't want to admit it, rape happens to men. And I'm not talking about just by women. It happens, by other men. I hate to say it, but it happens. Abuse happens to men, be it mental, physical, emotional, or even verbal abuse. These things happen, and a lot of us don't talk about it. And there's this notion that's common with men, and I even have to admit this myself. Most men don't believe that they can be raped or abused. What are your thoughts on that?
I think a lot of people don't know about it. I mean, when doing research on it, even though it's low, but it still happens. For example, I found this out: 1 in 9 men experience severe intimate partner physical violence, intimate partner contact sexual violence, and or intimate partner stalking. And then also another thing I found out was 1 in 71 men has been raped in their lifetime. So it happens.
I just think, man, we are the stronger creature of the two, so we don't really realize we can be sexual assaulted by a woman in any form or fashion. Because men, we feel like we pretty much control all the situations at hand. So I think that's why men don't report these things, or probably why men don't consider any of those things as rape or any sexual intimidations, because we feel like we are the stronger of the two.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I kind of have similar thought process of that. I think it may be more prevalent in like younger men, as far as like the rape side of it, or like I think like sexual assault side of it. I think as a grown man, I think if I was like inappropriately touched by a woman, I think I would just like have a conversation with her, just write it off. I don't feel like it's the same as if it was that happened to a woman where I have to report it.
Like a traumatic experience.
Yeah. Right. I think it could be traumatic if that's something you experienced at a younger age, right, and then it happened to you again. As an older person, I think there could be some like mental ramifications if that's happened to you. But like I've never had that happen to me. So like if I came into a situation where I felt like it was like a physical sexual assault on me from like a woman or even a man, like I think I would just deal with it with them. I wouldn't feel the need that I needed like extra support or something. Like I don't know if that's the same sentiment that other men have, but I don't know. I just really haven't had any experience personally with that.
Yeah, and probably, and so if you do report it, other men probably would consider you as a weak individual if you definitely report it.
Yeah. So we'll touch base on that in just a second. So my thoughts on this, and it took me a long time to even get to this place now where I myself can even admit that it does happen to men. I mean, because we grew up in a society where things like that, like you said, it just doesn't happen. And if something does happen of that nature, we don't look at it like that. Mm-hmm. We look at it as it was just an isolated incident. and we're going to deal with the incident at that moment and just be done with it. You know, we'll have that uncomfortable conversation. And for us, most of the time, it's not even uncomfortable. We just going to, you know, like, oh, you know, don't touch me. Don't put your hands on me. Or, you know, don't talk to me like that. Whatever the case may be. You know, whereas with women, it happens. And I guess because a lot of times with women, you know, those same situations, you know, they're a little bit more threatening because, you know, it's by an individual who is typically, not always, but typically, physically stronger than them, or has some emotional or mental capacity above them to where they feel weaker in that moment, or they feel helpless, you know, rather. You know, and it was an interesting point that Clay just brought up when he said he's never experienced it. Now we're talking about, you know, we're not only just talking about rape,
right,
you know, but we're also talking about abuse in the mental, verbal, emotional, or physical sense. So I do want to ask you, brothers, you know, have you ever experienced it? And I'll go first and just say this. I never thought that I did, but I was in a relationship recently, or, you know, within the last year or so, and I shared some things with Clay about this relationship. So I'm gonna be completely vulnerable and transparent right now, and I'm gonna put myself out there. And I told Clay, I was like, yo, we get into these arguments and we, you know, and things are said or whatever, and I was like, in my mind, the arguments and the things that were said were just toxic to me because, of course, you know, we don't think these things can happen to us or whatever. But I shared it with Clay, and I shared some real intimate details about the conversations that me and this young lady had, and some of the arguments that we had. And me and Clay really talked it out for like a minute on the phone. And, you know, and Clay really made an interesting point. He was like, you know, that's not just toxicity. That's straight up like verbal abuse,
right?
You know, and it didn't hit me. It didn't. The light bulb didn't go off right away in my head because I'm like, abuse. Hey, you know, I'm Vincent. Ain't nobody gonna abuse me, you know. But the reality set in that it's not even about whether I allow it or not. Number one, I didn't recognize it.
Right.
I didn't recognize that I was being verbally abused by allowing, or whether I was allowing or not allowing, but it was happening the way someone was talking to me on a regular basis.
Yep.
But because my skin is so thick, I thought I was just handling it. You know what I'm saying? So I was just like, I could take it. You know, I could take when somebody says this and says that and calls me this and calls me that. I mean, on a daily basis, you know, just have certain things come at me. Yep. I was like, I can handle it. But then it got to a point, and Clay made a point that day on the phone, I'll never forget. He was like, but why should you have to take it?
Right.
Why do you have to deal with those kind of things? You know, why put yourself through that? And that's when it really let me, you know, it really brought it to my attention. Like, yo, that's abuse.
Yeah.
And you know, by definition.
Yeah, and I think it's hard for any man to recognize abuse because we just feel like we're just so much stronger than women. And
and now, like hearing Vincent verbalize that, it does give me like a different thought process when it comes to that. I think, you know, with us as men, especially like if you play sports or if you know, like when I messed up, like my dad, he would talk, he never like, you know, whooped me and my sisters or anything like that, but he would talk to you very sternly, very directly. And I think a product of us having that stern correction when we messed up, I think thickened our skin over the years. And like when we deal with someone who's verbally abusive, we like, you know, don't really recognize, don't pay you know, much attention. Until you have like an afterthought like I was having now after hearing Vincent say that, because like, you know, I've had, you know, relationships where like people, you know, kind of talk down to you and you just like, you know, whatever, like you know, you say what you say or whatever, and then you know, you don't really think twice about it. You just kind of, you know, move forward, move past it, because, you know, we're used to like being talked to sternly. So
yeah, I'm definitely used to it too. I play football as well, and coaches have gotten into me quite a few times, and I had some things to say back a few times as well. But he still loved me. I still love him too.
Yeah, but you know, it's one of those instances where it's really one of those instances where like you guys said, you get used to certain things. Now, to me, a coach talking to you very sternly, sometimes even aggressively, is not the same as somebody just talking down, because your coaches don't talk down to you.
Yeah. But that's just what we used to.
Right.
So when a woman
So we don't
talks
recognize
down to you,
it.
just don't
Right.
recognize it because that's something that you've been used to. Okay, we scream at each other, but then we go back and do what we supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And that's why we don't recognize the verbal abuse when we are getting in arguments with women.
Yeah.
And such nature. And I could say I done had a few toxic relationships where we would get mad and we would say bad things to one another. I done had a few girls say they hate me, literally. And huh?
What about that car? You gonna tell them that one?
I mean, I have had a girl try to run me over with a car before.
You too?
But the thing is, we would always get back together. Even knowing that she was toxic or this relationship was toxic, it's just something that we did. It was bad, and we just figured it out. We would kiss and make up, and a week later, we back at the same thing.
Yeah.
And not realizing that we probably shouldn't have been together at that point, and not realizing that we were abusing each other.
Right.
And that toxic relationship probably shouldn't have been.
Yeah, for me, I can say I never experienced that. So I mean,
You never experienced a toxic relationship, but
So, but now that you asked that, because amongst us men, a lot of us, so here's another thing, and I'm guilty of this too. A lot of us don't recognize abusive traits.
right.
And one of the things that I had to really school myself on, as to recognizing abusive traits, like I said, first of all, as men, the first thing we think when we hear that is, oh, we letting some woman or somebody beat on us. That's not always the case. Of course, physically, we ain't letting nobody put their hands on. At least I
But
hope
some
not. Now
women
that
do
does
beat on
happen.
men. It
Yeah.
does happen.
Yeah.
I mean, and
I
if
done got hit by a woman
now,
before.
if I'm being completely transparent, so I've told a few people this in my life, and I know my parents listen to this podcast, so I'm going to admit something to my parents. I'm 35. This happened 19 years ago. You guys can see the scar on my left cheek here, right up under my eye. Okay. Some people have asked me. My child has asked me, Dad, how'd you get that scar on your eye? I lie every time. Why? I lie every time because I don't want to tell them. Okay, so when I was young, I was a teenager. I was stupid. I was doing stupid things, and I was also involved in some stupid things. Okay, so this scratch on my face, I call it a scratch, but really I ended up having to get stitches in my face. My family doesn't know this because I hid it. This was back during the Nelly era, where Nelly was walking around with Band-Aids. Okay, I hid this by putting a Band-Aid on my face. I had to get stitches in my face because of the girl that I was dealing with. We used to get into these real toxic arguments. Yep. Okay, well, I knew she carried a blade. Well, one day she decided to cut me up under the eye with the blade. And it literally, she missed my eye by like about a centimeter at the most.
Yeah, you should have had it locked up, but man, we don't do that.
We don't do that.
But if we had did that to that woman,
oh, they'd
we
been
would've-
screaming bloody murder.
We would have got locked up.
So, but and my point is that, like I said, a lot of times we don't recognize the different traits. So one of the things that I want to bring to light is some of those forms of abuse, like I said, because they're not always physical. It's not always about. No, we also do know that those things do happen. Sometimes there are men who get, not that it hurts him, but the point is just somebody having somebody beat on you all the time, whether it hurts or not, it's still abuse.
But I mean, I've seen some cases where it's like terrible dudes get.
Yeah, black eyes. They getting hit with bricks, cars.
Yeah.
If
I mean, I didn't get hit by the car, but
almost. But all jokes aside, the point is we're saying is that it happens. But some of those other ones that are not as tangible, is first of all, it is abuse whether you know it or not. If you are being controlled, that is a form of abuse. If you are being manipulated, they're utilizing their emotions or some situation that y'all have or some familiarity that y'all have with one another. That's a form of abuse.
if a woman is going through your phone, that's a form of abuse.
Y'all notice how quiet it got?
I don't know if I I can co-sign on that
I'm
one.
not co-signing with that one.
That's invasion of privacy, man. You should trust me enough not to go through my
Invasion?
phone.
Hey, it's happened to me before.
Invasion. I don't know about abuse though.
That's a form of abuse,
Malcolm saying
man.
you abusing his privacy though.
That's abusing of privacy. She should
Man, don't
trust
get
you-
this man no ammo.
No, I'm not.
She should trust you enough not to go through your phone that you're doing the
Well,
right
and
thing.
I'm so glad he
true.
did say that because now I'm not going to co-sign with that. But having insecurities and utilizing them
Exactly.
and acting on those insecurities for wherever they come from, always accusing a man of cheating if he
All
is
the
not.
time.
Accuse him of cheating. He can't go nowhere. He can't do anything without being, accused of something, or he's not where he say he is and things like that.
And you
That's a form of
keeping
abuse.
track of him everywhere he
Yes.
goes.
That's a form of
Women,
abuse
you know I'm
through
at work.
That's a form of abuse through manipulation.
Yep.
But us guys don't recognize it because, like, oh man, she just tripping. That's how we see it. Oh, she just tripping,
Yeah.
and we shrug it off again. But and the reason we're doing this episode is because, number one, to say to guys, that is not normal. That toxic behavior, I don't care how fine she is, that's not normal. And us men, us mature men, we have got to stop. What's the word I want to use? We have got to stop pretty much feeding into this stuff. Why? Because we want to have a piece of eye candy.
Oh, I know what you was about to say.
I thought he was talking about the cookie.
That too. No, but all jokes aside, because we don't want to lose a good piece of cookie. We deal with stupid things, and guys do that though.
I mean, we deal with a crazy woman for some good cookie.
Yeah, and
I
we
mean,
do.
that's
And,
just what it
and
is.
for those that are listening, we're being very serious. We're laughing about it, but we're being very serious
I'm telling the
because
truth.
it happens. Every man in here has dealt with some crazy woman, some toxic woman, abusive, or just insecure, or whatever. Why? Because the cookie was good.
And the cookie.
Or even okay,
or
let's take sex.
Or the knowledge.
Moving right along. Take sex out of that equation because she was fine, or it was something about her that we dealt with the toxicity.
Yeah.
And you know how everybody has this whole little slogan, they want let's normalize. Okay, let's normalize not dealing with toxic women.
Yeah.
And ladies, we're not bashing you right now because we also need to normalize in y'all's role not dealing with toxic men. But we'll talk about that in another episode because we're all going to talk about, toxic men and how they pretty much turn good women into bad ones.
Yeah,
Or,
a lot of times I can put some of the blame on myself too, because
We all can.
I typically do drive people crazy.
We all do. We all do to an extent. I mean, and I know he drives women crazy. He drives us crazy.
Exactly.
And we've been friends for years, and he still finds a way to drive us crazy. But no, we got to take.
So I don't blame y'all.
But yeah, but seriously, fellas, my dudes, my black men, we have to normalize not dealing with toxicity. It's not normal. Nobody should have to wake up every day and be like, what's she gonna do today? What's she gonna say today? What's gonna happen today? Where can I not go to the grocery store without her blowing me up 10 times? Where you at? When you coming home? What you doing? Who you with? Who you talking to? Are you really going to get potatoes? Are you really at this girl's house? Stuff like that. That's not normal.
No,
But some of us have dealt with it for so long.
it becomes.
It becomes life. When somebody else on the outside is thinking of or calling you out on you, like, dude, it's just Tuesday.
Right.
Like, what's wrong with your guy? It's Tuesday. What's
Oh,
wrong?
like your boy, might not get married.
Yeah, he was like, yo, what's wrong with your wife? He was like, what? It's Wednesday. So anyway, moving along. Let's talk about the stigma that's placed on men who have been abused, whether they came forward or not. When people find out whether they've been abused or raped, let's talk about that stigma because there's a stigma that gets put on men. Let's talk about that.
I guess I feel like it dampers their their confidence or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
They think low about themselves,
Yeah.
and they start to believe what the woman, their spouse or significant other, whatever, they start to believe what they say about them. So it affects. I mean, it could affect their job. I mean, just personal relationship with friends or whatever. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if one of our friends came up and said, "Hey man, I'm being abused," we probably would pick on him or something like that. We might consider him weak or something like that. I think that's what we have to get out of. We have to start listening to what each other is saying before we make a joke. Now we probably still gonna make a joke about it afterwards, but we need to.
But we got your back.
We got to reach out to them and we need to listen first before we make a joke about.
And another thing I forgot to mention, in our community, I feel like a lot of men that are going through this are scared because they're going to be considered a punk or a coward.
They don't
or something
lose their
like
street credit.
Yeah, exactly. They're
you
worried.
a woman, this, that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They're more worried about their street credit than just actually feeling better.
Their mental health. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean that goes back to what we were talking about, previously. We were talking about like the true pillars of like masculinity. I think sometimes us as men, we haven't created an environment where other men can come to us if they're going through something like that, because we think it's gonna be a strike to our masculinity. I'm not gonna be seen as a equal man or a superior man within the group of men that I'm in, which that's actually a wrong way of thinking. I think the way that, and it's not that person's fault, it's just men in general, we're competitive and we always want to always seem strong, always want to seem that, hey, we're the best. So I think a lot of those things, there's nothing wrong with competition, but I think sometimes there's a point where we need to cut it off and like let our brothers know that, hey, yo, you can come to me or anything, like you dealing with something. Because if you can't come to me about this, like, well, what else could I help you with if you feel confident enough to bring this to me? Well, we can talk about anything, but we have to make that open that door to make it okay. Like if you know someone who's going through something,
normalize it. And definitely, So and another one of those, like, all you guys brought up really valid points as far as like stigmatisms placed on men who have dealt with these things. I think another.
You mean stigmas?
Huh?
Stigmatism, would you?
I say stigmatism. Boy, I'm tired.
I got a stigmatism.
That's what these things right here for.
I know. Listen, I'm tired. Y'all forgive me. But no, a stigma that is placed on men, who have dealt with these things, be it abuse or rape. One of those things is, first off, nobody takes you serious.
Mm-hmm.
You get called names. You get, you get talked about or whatever. But even, that's just on the joking side of things. But even on the serious side, like I said, no one pays you any attention, or they don't believe you because they like, and that don't happen to guys or whatever. Well, how can that happen? How can that happen? And
I think sometimes, man, some guys are just like afraid to admit it, or just fail to see it or something. I don't know what it is. Like, I don't know if it's you're afraid to come out to say it because you're gonna feel weak, or you're just not acknowledging it.
Well, that is it. And okay, so I'll tell you like this from experience. When I shared that with Clay, I shared it with him because I knew something about that whole relationship just wasn't right. I was like, this is not normal. It was just, and I can handle it, but it was just getting to a point where I was just like, yo, something ain't right. Like I need somebody else to hear this, and I'm gonna just be straight blunt when I tell them about it. 'Cause like, this ain't normal. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So, and I will tell you that one of the things that I did feel when I was talking, I was like, yo, I'm me. I'm Vincent. That don't happen to me. No one talks down to me. No one talks to me all crazy. That's just not allowed. That's not to say that I'm the biggest, baddest dude running through the land. Mm-hmm. You ain't never heard of nobody talking to me crazy. That does not happen. Period. Be it in my family or in the street.
Is that part of our ego?
And I think part of it is part of our ego, is that like, man, nobody gonna talk to me, and that it was part of my ego because I mean, it's been proved no one talks to me like that. It's just not allowed. If it was a dude, and I'm gonna just be completely honest about it, I probably would put my hands around his throat. Now, of course, a female.
I told a girl that one time before.
Okay, I didn't tell no girl.
I said, you're lucky you ain't no dude.
Okay, I'm glad he cleared that up quick.
I told her just like that, boy. I said, you
no, but but all jokes aside, there's a part of me, and especially there's an old part of me that's like, you'd have talked to me like that. If a dude would have talked to me, like, dude, I'd have choked you out until you turn colors. Just because first of all, it's in my bloodline. Excuse me. But but a lot of that was I did feel weak for a moment because I'm like, I let a woman half my size talk to me that way.
Mm-hmm.
No, she never did anything physical to me or whatever. Not really. But now that we talk about the physical side of things, because we did bring that up, and we were saying like sometimes we don't believe that it can happen. But let's talk about the physical side. Do you think that there's a double standard, and maybe that's why a lot of men don't come forward with it?
Well, absolutely, it's a double standard for it, man. So if you report a woman like domestic abuse, if you call and report domestic abuse, the first person the cop look at is the man, right? Not knowing that the woman is probably the one that did all the assault in the household, but the first person they're gonna look to is the man,
Right.
and they're gonna ask the woman, well, what did the man do to you, as opposed to asking the man what really happened here.
Right.
And I just think that's just what it is, a double standard, and that's just what we have been growing to see for our whole lives, pretty much.
Yeah, I think one thing that perpetuates that double standard is because there are a lot of men that put their hands on women.
A lot.
And then, it's just like the one bad apple spoils the bunch. It's like, it happens, but then the time is where, the man has been abused. It's not looked with, looked over as, as much, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but I think I've been in a situation where this girl kept trying to hit me, I'm way bigger than the girl, but I don't want you hitting me. It doesn't feel good, so I'm trying to restrain her,
Right.
and she's still trying to swing and hit me and stuff. So I'm restraining her. I was restraining her so hard, she ended up getting a bruise on her arm, and I'm just trying to stop her from hitting me. But if that was a situation where the cops were called, she the only one got a bruise, and I'm about to be locked up. So I think that it's a huge double standard, and you can be in a situation. I mean, that situation didn't escalate past that, but if it had I would have been in some trouble, even though I didn't really do anything but just try to restrain her from stop hitting me.
Right.
So.
Right.
And then I guess y'all gonna have to help me. 'Cause I'm about to butcher some names. You know how I am with names. So a couple actors. One, the dude that was it Pirates of the Caribbean? What's his name?
Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp.
Oh, yeah,
he
yeah.
was involved with that. Like his girl was beating up on him and everything like that. And another one was Stacey Connor. No, Stacey Dash. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So apparently she called the cops on. No, I think he called the cops on her or whatever. And she said that he was hitting on him, and they found out that that wasn't the case. And they he had bruises and different things like that. So. Yeah, but I mean, it can go both ways. I mean, men, it puts a bad spotlight on men that aren't actually beating on their girls or whatever, and that's why that's the reason why they're scared to come out and come forth about it. So.
Yeah, because you could call the cops because you getting hit and you be the one to get arrested.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That happens all the time.
Exactly.
That
They don't
happens
even
all
look.
the
They
time.
don't even look at you like what happened. Like Michael said, like they just go straight and they go straight to her. And if she mad enough, she gonna be like, he hit me.
Yep.
Like, what?
Yeah.
And then now you going downtown.
I'm going to jail,
And you took an L.
and then you about to take another L in prison. So
Yeah. And then on top of that, like if a female does get arrested, a lot of times they're not gonna get as a harsh of a sentence as a man would.
Right. That's true. So.
Yeah. So and I wanna strictly ask this to grown men, not young boys, because we know what the effects could be on a young boy who has to deal with these type of things. What do you think could be some of the mental or emotional effects from dealing with rape or abuse as a grown man?
Suicide. I mean,
Absolutely.
like,
Dang, but he went straight to it, didn't he?
Suicide.
And
Straight
one
to
thing too, like men in America, they commit suicide at a higher rate
Right.
than anybody.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
and I mean,
That's true.
and I don't know the stats wise between white male and black males or just any other race like committing suicides, but I mean for us I'm quite sure it's damaging because like we don't want to tell anybody about what we're going through. We feel like hey, if I hold it in, I'm a strong person or whatnot, and if I go out here and tell my homeboy about it, I get clowned and be picked on about it or whatever. So
Right.
yeah, I definitely feel like that brings a strong case of suicide and depression. So
Yeah, I think it. With men, we come with a high thing of anxiety. I mean, that's always what we have, but I also think it contributes to depression and a lot of mental disorders, especially the things that happen in your youth. That is your building blocks. The majority of your building blocks, something that's gonna last you your whole life. is through your youth, and if you're being assaulted in your youth, it's definitely gonna have an effect in your manhood.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we all know that, like oftentimes people who go through traumatizing things in their youth, it ends up manifesting itself in their own life later, whether they become an abuser or they do the same things that happen to them, or they're in just mental catharsis and they can't function regularly just because they got this trauma that's undealt with. So I think that us as men need to let men know it's okay to go get your mental health checked out.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And you guys talked a lot about the mental, so I'll speak a little bit on the emotional side of things, because I do know some of those adverse emotional effects that can happen is, first off, you lose trust in people in general. Like, especially because you're like, I'm a man, like, things just shouldn't happen to me, but yet they did. Whether you allowed it or it was just something that it happened just because of the people or person you had around you. You really start to distance yourself from people, or you become, and I think I've seen this in a lot of men, especially when I talk to women, and I've heard this, a lot of men are emotionally disconnected. And I think sometimes that happens because sometimes women just think that men are just emotionally unavailable because, we just dogs or something like that. But most women don't realize that there's a reason. Men are not naturally unemotional. We have an instinctual cap on it where we can control it a little bit more. That's why we're not as much emotional people as women are, instinctually. I'm speaking, because that doesn't happen that way on an individual basis. But men are not naturally without emotion. When we become distant or disconnected, or as women like to say, I don't want some emotionally unavailable man, take the time to realize something happened that caused that. And it could be that he dealt with a traumatizing situation, or if it wasn't just traumatizing, it still just has lingering effects because of what he dealt with. I don't know that I deal with any lingering effects. I know I learned a lesson. Like, now I have to pay attention. I'm not gonna let nobody toxic into my life again. I'm not gonna let nobody talk to me all kind of crazy. Whether I think I can deal with it or not, or I can handle it. Like Clay said, first off, why do you have to handle it? Why is that something you even want to deal with? So, moving on. Like I said, this episode was inspired by, the Me Too movement. And one of the things that we know is that the Me Too movement shed a lot of light on the abuses and traumas that many women, deal with. Do you think it could also be the catalyst, maybe someday, to more men being more confident enough to speak out on their experiences? Or are we just going to continue to be plagued by the stigmas? And be honest about it on how you feel.
I'll say this. It'll continue to be, I guess men will continue to go through the cycle unless someone steps up and comes out about it. As far as I see right now, I mean, it seems like, that's the main thing. Like, the Me Too movement is the more popular thing. And I'm not saying, I don't even want to say popular or whatever, but I just feel like that's in the spotlight right now. And I guess just maybe men don't care about it, or maybe, but if it takes that one person to come out and be upfront and say, hey, like, I've been abused, and then maybe it'll trickle down and other men will come out and start saying it. But yeah, I mean, someone has to come out and start, someone has to come out and start that topic. So, yeah.
So for me, I think it's hard to say, because one thing about all men are a creature of habits.
Right.
Yeah.
Every morning I get up, I do the exact same thing. Every morning I put my socks on before I put my shirt on, before I put my pants on, I tuck it in, put my belt on. If you literally watch me, it's the same thing every morning that I do. And I think it's going to be hard to get a man out of his habits of talking about his feelings.
Right.
I think it can happen, yeah, it can, but I think it's going to be a long time before men create that new habit.
Yeah.
I think that it's possible for change just because like what I'm seeing now, there are a lot more men on platforms like on social media, YouTube, and things like expressing issues within the male community. So I think it's starting to change now, and it's becoming more accepted that men talk about men's issues. But we all know, like, as far as like media goes, social media, daytime talk show, it's always been geared to women, and they've always had a platform to express their issues. And so I think it's gonna be a while before men catch up. But I think that just with things now, men are definitely catching up and feeling it's more okay to express our issues and like seek help for our issues, and like just recognizing that there are issues.
Right. Yeah. So let me ask you this too, and in regards to the Me Too movement, should the Me Too movement include men who have suffered, abusive traumas or even rape cases?
I would agree that it should include men, because I mean, rape is rape. You went through it, and why should it be excluded to just women? I mean, if you are a man and got sexually assaulted or whatever, it should include men as well. So
I would say let them have Me Too, and I would say, men, we should start something else, Us Too or something else. Let's not water down what the women going through just to include us. How about we just do our own thing and let it be inclusive to both?
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I don't know if we should really be a part of our issue should be a part of Me Too movement, because there's already some conflicting issues with the Me Too movement, because sometimes there are women who ruin what the movement is actually about and just like lie and make up stuff that's not even true. So there's already adversity within it. So I don't think adding our issues to it is gonna really be helpful. I think it should be something separate for men, by men. I don't think it needs to be an additive to the Me Too movement. Let it stand on its own, because like they already got to deal with issues of the people affecting the validity of the movement already. Right. So we don't need to bring our issues to that.
Yeah,
I never thought about that. So yeah, great point.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Because the next, so we kind of answered my next question as well. Because I was going to ask, does including men in the movement take away the focus on what women go through? And I would actually have to agree. And I agree with everything you guys said. I agree with Malcolm and Clay. I don't think that men should be included in that particular movement. Yeah. Now, I do agree with Mizio that there needs to be some type of either movement or we don't even have to go so grand as a movement. There needs to be some type of shift in the atmosphere where, as Malcolm was saying, where men do get to a place where they feel more confident and comfortable speaking on these things. And Clay was saying, like, now women can do this a little bit more easier. Why? Because number one, they've always had the platforms, where they can speak on such issues. And if we be honest, that was one of the reasons we started this podcast, was so that men had a platform to where we can talk about the things that were most prevalent to us, regardless of that, regardless of the topic and the category, we were going to put it all out here on an After 29 podcast. And I think we've done a great job at that, but we're just four guys, and hopefully we're inspiring other men to seek out their own platforms, or even if it's not just a platform, but seek out their own means of talking about things. And it doesn't have to be rape or abuse. It could be anything that they're dealing with in their lives. Men also need a way to get that off their chest sometimes. Right. And we talked about this in the mental health episode. Men need to normalize taking care of and recognizing that they do have a mental state. You are not just a brick wall. You're not a Power Ranger. You can't go out all day, every day and be Superman. Your mental state can be weakened as well. So, you got to take care of that. You know what I'm saying? So, another thing, in response to our last week's episode, or a week or two at this point, do you believe that there's a connection between rape and abuse of men and the emasculation of men?
I mean, I haven't looked at the data. I've assumed that, but I'm not gonna say definitely yes because I have no research behind that. I would think so because just like we talked about buck breaking, it's like exerting dominance over someone else. So and we all know that in society men are traditionally the dominant of the two. So I think there may be some science behind it that potentially could be. If it's factual, I don't know because I haven't done the research.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that, because that's what abuse is. Abuse is exerting your dominance over the person that you are abusing.
Absolutely.
So I think it has maybe a little bit, just like Clayton said, though, I probably have to look into it a little bit more. But I do think it is, the emasculation of men and rape. I think it's one of.
I agree with Clayton and Malcolm, and to kind of piggyback on to what they're saying. And for me, I'm not really sure on that data about that, but I mean, by doing something like that, I feel like us as men, we have that strong demeanor, and by you doing something devastating like that, it breaks us. So yeah.
When I posed the question, I was thinking about a comment that was made. I don't remember which one of us made it. About when we did the emasculation of the black male, when we did that episode. But somebody touched on it. I said that part of emasculating men is about attacking the mental, and that even sometimes, even when I'm going to be careful this episode the way I word it, but one of the points that was made that sometimes that can be not like a mental illness, but it can be a mental issue why a person wants to.
So what you're saying is it's a response to the experienced trauma.
Yes, absolutely, and I'm like you guys too, and
Out the field over here.
I have no data either because I don't know. And I'm not a scientist. I'm not a psychologist. I have not studied this, but just. I mean, we're all smart guys here. We can kind of ponder some thoughts here. And I don't have any proof, but there's a part of me that thinks in some instances, not all, that there has been some event that led to an emasculated male. That there was something that may have triggered him. That brought out, that's maybe some, let's just say this. I'm going to put it out there bluntly just so that people can understand what I'm saying. Let's just say abuse or rape, something like that happens to a guy. We already know the stigma. Can't talk about it. He feels weak, feels less than a man, and then that carries on. It lingers in him, and then all of a sudden, like he just feels so weak and less than a man. This, that, and the third. That it almost gets to a point where that it starts to manifest itself in his appearance, in the way he carries himself, in his sexuality, in his mindset, and things like that. Like I said, I have no proof. But I would like to think that for some, not all, that does make some kind of sense. That it might not be a direct contributor, but I believe that is a contributing factor to some of it.
Yeah. I mean, I can see the validity in that because, like, growing up with my father, like he's a man's man, and that's what I knew. That's what I learned over the years growing up in the household with him, and that's what I emulate in my life. So I'm sure, like, if in some cases, if you experience some type of trauma like that, you normalize it in your head, or and you think that that's okay. I could see that you emulate that behavior and do it to someone else. I could potentially see that could be a part of the emasculation of men. But again, I like to look at the numbers and look at like studies to.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get us a male psychologist up here one day and ask them some questions.
Because it ain't us.
That's their study, so they should know more about this study.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. All right, so I mean, in closing, guys, I understand that this was a topic that it wasn't easy to talk about. Because for one, this is just not things we talk about on a daily basis. Women, on the other hand, just through experience, even if they're sharing it with a guy. Women are more comfortable and more open about sharing these experiences because, number one, for them, publicly, it's more common. For us, it's not. First of all, most of the time, we can't even acknowledge that it's happening to us ourselves, so let alone to the public eye.
Yeah.
With all of that being said, in closing, what do you say to men out there, especially the men who are dealing with things who just won't speak on it? What do you say to them?
That it's okay to open up and talk about your issues or whatever you're going through, physical, mental, verbal, whatever. I mean, it's okay to talk to somebody about it. I mean, you're not going to be considered a punk, and if any of your friends consider you a punk, then they're not friends. You need to find another group of people. So, I mean, definitely talk to somebody about it.
I would say continue to reach out to someone to talk about, friends, doctor, or whoever. Just, you can't bury this stuff forever,
Right.
Because it's gonna come to the top at one point. So figure out somebody that you can talk to, you can reach out to confidently, and speak your piece.
Yeah, I mean, just after listening to what you said, Vincent, I think it's already tough for women to come out in situations like this, and we know sometimes even some women don't really talk about it, and then thinking about the compounding on top of that, being a man, and you want to always seem like in that strong frame, and you seem like you're invincible on top of a tough situation to already talk about. That's a mountain to climb. So I think that us as men should, among our friends, we should let them know, hey bro, you can come talk to me about anything. I know we crack on each other, because men, we communicate a lot different than women, because we crack on each other about a lot of stuff, and then sometimes if you don't know that your core group of friends can have a real adult conversation about anything, that could be a tough position to be in. So you need to fortify your circle with people that are intelligent, and that you can rely on and talk to them about anything. Right. But even more so than that, your friends are great, but professional help, someone who deals with this on the daily, is probably even better than your group of friends. You can start with your friends, but unless you have some psychologist friends, like mental health friends, go to someone who can actually really give you some clinical help.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the only thing I'll say is I'll piggyback a little bit off what Clay just said. You can start with your friends. I mean, hell, I did, and I was able to, share an experience with Clay, and not that Clay could completely understand, but he was able to listen, and he was able to give some feedback on it. But I would also say to guys, as we've said before, normalize taking care of your mental health. It's not just a woman thing. Not women, or not just crazy people go see a psychiatrist. It's not to say that you're crazy, but it is to say that you have something that you need to get off your chest. Starting with your friends is great, but sometimes your friends, good intentions or not, they don't always understand, and they can't always give you that feedback, or they can't always give you what you're looking for
or what you need.
Yeah. And it's not because they don't want to, they do, but sometimes not everybody understands. And sometimes your family, just like you guys said, it's okay to seek professional help. The main thing I will leave with all men, period, is speak out. Reach out to somebody. I know it's uncomfortable, and I know it's not something we like to admit that we go through, but if it is happening, my brother, it is not normal. It's not normal, and whether you can handle it or not, it's not okay. Because first of all, you might get to a day where you can't handle it.
Right.
Then what happens when you kill everybody in the house because something that you thought you could handle last week, now all of a sudden you can't.
Yeah.
You just reach your breaking point. You're tired of her insecurities. You're tired of the blaming. You're tired of the emotional trauma. You're tired of the mental trauma or physical trauma if it's there. You're definitely tired of the verbal abuse. It's not normal. You don't have to deal with it. That's all I'll say at this point. It's been another episode of the After 29 podcast. Until next time, peace.
Doses.
Peace.